guys, it's Sarah. So today I'm going to be doing the Bookish Pet Peeves kind of video. I was asked to do this by Sammy Sugarpop, so of course I obliged. So I've split it into two categories, the physical aspects of a book and then the actual content story of the book. We're gonna start physical, then story. Alright, let's roll. So number one, cover changes. Oh my goodness, I'm sure everybody hates them. Just bad. Just no, please don't. Another thing is books that are different sizes. And this irks me to no end. Please, uniform height. Another thing that's really annoying is movie tie-in covers. Take for example my copy of The Hobbit. Now this in itself isn't particularly a bad movie tie-in, but I would much rather have something that was not from the movie because I don't know, it just seems cheesy. At least there's not a face on it. And that brings me to my next pet peeve, and that is books that use people's faces on the covers. They just look weird on covers. Take for example this Iron Fae bind-up. I love the color scheme and all of like the fancy bedazzling they have on this, but just the face ruins it. And not that it's a particularly bad face, it's just the face focus. I don't know, it just like kind of, one, forces you to imagine this person as like the main character or whatever, and two, I don't know, it just looks cheesier. Another thing that just grinds my gears is when you find a book that looks interesting, but you're not sure which number in the series it is. I don't know if you're number 1 or number 5. Please just put a nice book 2 or book 1 somewhere. Another thing is when you find a book but the author's name is bigger than the title of the book. And obviously this happens more with like the big name authors. Boom! Author name, then whatever the book is. It's like the focus is on the author's body of work rather than this particular piece of work. Another thing that tends to happen a lot with more mainstream books are when there's not a synopsis on a book. So you'll pick up a book and be like, this looks good, I wonder what it's about. And you'll look at the back and it'll just have recommendations of other authors saying how wonderful it is, and you'll open the flap and it'll just be like a big picture of the author, but not a synopsis. And then it's just like, but what is the book about? And then you just don't know. Okay, so now we're gonna talk more about the actual story and content of a book. First, love at first sight. And this happens a lot. There'll be maybe a character and they'll glance across the room and see someone and they're like, dang, I think I love you. And the other person will look and be like, oh, I love you too. No, you can't really love somebody before you have a conversation or bonding or any of that kind of thing. Like, yeah, you could be like, ooh, dang, that's sexy, but not love. Another thing that's super prevalent but also annoying is when the dude is just like a giant asshole, but there's all these different excuses and reasonings behind it. The character will be aloof and mean and sarcastic and will put down like the main character or another character or something like that, but they'll be like, oh, but that poor baby, he had a bad childhood. Or, oh, he's just going through a bad time, he's just broody and mysterious, and oh, I still love him, no matter what he does to me. Another thing that is really common in especially young adult books, the stupid, pointless love triangle with a very obvious bias. There are good love triangles and there are terrible love triangles. You can tell when an author definitely favorites one of the boys or the girl. The author will spend a lot of time talking about one particular part of the love triangle. A lot of the times when that happens, the girl or boy will have the other person in the love triangle and be like, oh, I still love you, but I love him more, but I need you to be my friend, and I'm gonna just sit in front of you with my sexy new boyfriend and just rub it in your face. If you're gonna be doing something like that, if it's a fair triangle and like the character loves this person and this person equally, and like part of the story is the conflict between these two people that they might love equally, that's a good plot device. But if you have just like a super obvious choice, don't bother with the love triangle aspect. Another thing that's been happening a lot lately is trilogies or series for the sake of it. So many stories can be in one, not spread out, but it just doesn't really have to be done all the time. Standalones are good too, you know? Another thing that's really dumb is info dumps, and these are the worst. This is when you open up a book and then you're practically reading a textbook of the history of this place or just stuff, all this information. Another thing that particularly happens in fantasy, weird ass names and no way of pronouncing them. Apostrophes everywhere. Names with just the weirdest spelling, but then you don't know how to say it, and then I'll start saying it in my head a certain way, and then I'll hear somebody else say it a different way, and I just get so confused. Maybe have a glossary or a character list at the beginning with pronunciation, a little bit of a map of the world or something. That is really, I appreciate that if the names are weird. One thing that bothers me to no end is when the character is gazing upon herself. It's generally a girl, and she gazes upon herself and has an inner monologue that we're reading of her talking about how flawless she is. It'll kind of go something like this. I stared into the mirror, my raven black hair cascading down my back, my green eyes sparkled upon my milky smooth skin, and as I gazed down upon my tight lithe body, oh, I'm so beautiful, oh. No. Another thing that's too darn prevalent is the lack of sex and or swearing in books that may or may not be completely saturated in violence, naughty adult words. But then, stabbing, dismembering, violence, death, those are cool. Violence is cool, but not the other stuff. I know, I'm gonna gloss over that. Another thing is when the point of view changes, but then it's not easy to tell. A lot of times authors might jump between points of view, and that's really cool, but if you don't make it clear who's speaking, then it's just really confusing. That's something in the book Dune by Carrie Corp and Lori Langdon. I did a review on it here, and this book was really good at the changing of the point of view. Also, all the Game of Thrones books I find are really good at this because they label the chapters who is speaking, and that is just fantastic. I like that. When it's just labeled plain simple. I like it. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching me rant for too long about book things, but I just have so many feelings, you know? So if you agree or disagree with anything that I had to say, definitely let me know because I love seeing different perspectives on things. If you also want to connect with me on any of the other social media websites, all the links are down below. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I will definitely see you guys later.